The American Wild West was a geography marked by untamed individuality and anarchy. The Westerners' primary objective was to survive. The particular difficulties and perils of the frontier influenced the cultural standards of the time. You'd be shocked to learn how many acceptable behaviors at the time would be surprising in the modern day. In this episode of Native Journal, we explore things that were considered normal with historical photos from the Wild West. The woman circled in red was Lucy Higgs Nichols. Although she was born into slavery in Tennessee, she was able to escape during the Civil War and made her way to the 23rd Indiana Infantry Regiment. She relocated to Indiana with the regiment after the war, where she worked with some of the 23rd's veterans. Following the passage of the Army Nurses' Pension Act of 1892 by Congress, which permitted Civil War nurses to receive pensions for their services, she filed for one. Her pension was refused because the War Department had no records of her. The pension that 55 living veterans of the 23rd believed she deserved was approved by Congress due to their petition. Taking a closer look at the life of Sioux Indian Iron Whiteman, who rose to fame due to his appearance in Bill's Wild West show. He was well known for his proficiency with horses and his talent with a bow and arrow. In 1883, he became a Buffalo Bill's Wild West show member and made a name for himself with his exciting act. An old snapshot that captures a dark chapter in American history. We are talking about a picture from 1864, taken in Atlanta, Georgia during the American Civil War, showing a Union soldier watching over a slave sale shop. There are other pictures like this one that serve as a constant reminder of how horrible slavery was in the United States. A picture of Calamity Jane from about 1882 honors her courage and shooting prowess during Dakota's Gold Rush era. She is seen as one of the most iconic heroines of the American Wild West. A large consignment of buffalo skins is shown in this 1878 picture shot in Kansas Dodge City, and it is kept in a yard. Thousands of buffaloes were slaughtered by commercial hunters, and their corpses were left to decay on the plains as a reminder of the widespread devastation and exploitation that came with the westward move. In 1900, a cowboy showed off his amazing lasso abilities for the camera in Oklahoma. In the American state of California, a picture from around 1869 depicts a Native American admiring the recently finished Transcontinental Railroad. The train represented modernity and the advancement of the country to some. However, for others, the railroad represented the end of indigenous villages and their customs, and reduced native sovereignty. The magnificent walls of the Grand Canyon in Arizona are seen in a shot from 1873. Native Americans have lived in these territories for centuries and have tents in the fields to the left. The majesty of nature and the depth of the American West's cultural legacy are evident here. Chinese railroad workers were the most despised immigrants in the West before the arrival of the Mexicans. They were paid $1 daily compared to around $2.50 for white laborers. They also had to build camps and provide food, while the white laborers received all this. This photo captures the hard realities of Chinese laborers who contributed to railroad building despite prejudice and unequal treatment. At 21, Wyatt Earp, one of the most well-known figures in the American Wild West, moved to the West in quest of possibilities and adventures. He was a miner and a trader before rising to prominence as one of the West's most popular lawmen. Earp is renowned for participating in some of the era's bloodiest battles, like the shootout at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona in 1881. Judge Roy Bean, sometimes called the Law West of the Pecos, was a colorful figure who frequently presided over trials while intoxicated. Judge Bean was an eccentric guy with a short fuse. Historians dispute his claim that the U.S. president personally appointed him as a judge, which he proudly claimed to have achieved. Sioux Indian Joe, Black Fox, performed in the Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. He took part in tribal dance performances and combat reenactments throughout the program, introducing the audience to the traditions and customs of his people. He could travel the globe and see different cultures because of his involvement with the Wild West show. A remarkable image taken in Utah in 1872 depicts a tribe of Paiute Indians. A Native American tribe known as the Paiute existed in the western United States Great Basin. They lived as nomads, surviving only on hunting, fishing, and collecting fruits and seeds. Regrettably, the violent and oppressive colonizers who took over their homeland left a lasting effect on their history. One of the most popular gunslingers of the American Wild West, James Butler Hickok, was better known by his stage name, Wild Bill. Bill had a reputation for being an expert marksman, particularly with the two handguns he always kept about him. Bill served as a lawman, a stagecoach guide, and a buffalo hunter before making his name as a gunslinger. Among the most well-known military commanders of the 1800s was General George Crook. In 1852, Crook enlisted in the U.S. Army and participated in several engagements during the American Civil War. He became one of the most important military commanders of the day when he was chosen to oversee military operations against Native American tribes in the West after the conflict. A comic scene from the American Civil War. About 1863, an American soldier may be seen in the picture clowning around for the camera. This one is one of the few images that reveal some compassion and comedy that persisted throughout the mayhem of war. This picture was taken at the site of the public execution of the conspirators who were found guilty of killing Lincoln. Currently, hanging site is a tennis court. Public executions were conducted at Fort McNair in South Washington, D.C., to uphold the law and deter crime. The executions used to draw sizable crowds of spectators. It was customary for merchants to provide refreshments and food to onlookers while they watched the executions. In the Wild West, the judicial system was often unproven and prone to mishaps. A great deal of public executions occurred as a consequence of false trials. Occasionally, individuals were put to death for offenses they did not commit, which heightened the debate over public executions. Additionally, these killings were racially discriminatory. The disparities that already existed in American society at the time were exacerbated by the fact that minorities, particularly African Americans, faced harsher penalties than whites. Even though it was cruel, the practice remained common until the late 20th century, when it was outlawed. A photo of Deadwood, South Dakota, depicts the bustling main street with wagons and people, symbolizing the early stages of this well-known Wild West town. One of the cities that would eventually be immortalized in a plethora of Western television shows and films. In 1885, a group of Texas Rangers from the Wild West stood for a picture at a studio. These guys served as the defenders of justice throughout the huge state of Texas. They belonged to one of the Wild West's most illustrious law enforcement units. They took part in several significant occasions in the American West's history. This picture captures a special time in stagecoach history that remains unmatched. During its day, the Deadwood stagecoach was regarded as one of the most secure and well-maintained automobiles. This was because it was a convenient target for thieves, since it carried mail, money, and other valuables. But the stagecoach was well armed, and its crew of gallant and capable men were prepared to protect the carriage and its occupants at any cost. Soon after gold was discovered in the American state of Montana in 1870, wagons and people crowded the bustling main street of Helena, turning the city into a center of activity and drawing hundreds of prospectors and adventurers looking to make their fortune in the golden hills of the West. Any American citizen may claim up to 160 acres of public property under the Homestead Act of 1862, providing they constructed a dwelling and farmed the land for a minimum of 5 years. Seeking these lands and a better life, many families made their way to Nebraska. They had to overcome many obstacles and hurdles to start their fields and construct their houses. They had to contend with severe weather, scarcity of supplies, and isolation. The Wild West was still in the last stages of its fabled heyday in 1910. Cowboys with their horses were legendary emblems of courage and independence. This image, shot in Wild West Bottom, Texas, depicts a lone cowboy resting on a hillside with his devoted horse. The life of a cowboy was difficult and demanding. They rode across the broad plains for extended periods, caring for livestock and navigating the perils of the Wild West. Through the gaze of a photographer, a teenage prostitute at a Pennsylvania brothel in 1892 was photographed. This picture provides a window into life on the outside of civilization in the Wild West, when many women had to deal with the unpleasant reality of being traded as bodies. In 1890, 2 sex workers posed for pictures at an Alaskan brothel during the Wild West period. Men swarmed the borderlands in quest of employment. They greatly outnumbered women in many areas as a result of their huge migration, which gave rise to the heyday of Madame-run brothels. Maimon is the name of the Native American man shown on this pic. He was a native of the Mojave Desert who served as a guide and interpreter in the 1800s, mostly in Colorado in the 1870s. Timothy O'Sullivan was a frequent customer of Maimon's, who worked as a photographer. He would assist him in locating some of the most picturesque settings for stunning photos. In contrast to other photographers, O'Sullivan was against the idea of taking pictures of Native Americans in a studio. Rather, he preferred to depict them in a really lifelike manner. In addition to capturing much wildlife, he enjoyed photographing many Civil War sites. That photographer really has guts. In the state of Michigan in 1892, there were men with a sizable mound of buffalo heads. There formerly were up to 60 million bison roaming the plains, supplying food, clothing, and shelter to the native populations. The bison is still revered and seen as a spiritual icon of Native American heritage by many tribes. Unfortunately, the bison almost disappeared from the Great Plains during the 19th century's westward migration. What do you know then? Even in the ancient West, people kept dogs as pets. In this instance, however, the handsome young guy will have this adorable dog accompany him on a forthcoming hunting expedition. We still believe the two were very close friends, even when they weren't hanging around and hunting for things to shoot. This man is outfitted with everything he needs to spend time hunting turkeys, grouse, or anything in the great outdoors. He's got the high boots to keep out any snakes, the hat to shield him from the sun, and a lever-action gun loaded with extra ammunition. An uncommon image of the renowned outlaw gunslinger Billy the Kid, the notorious bandit of the American West, was captured in 1877. He may be seen in this historic photo on the left of the table, playing a heated card game with other members of his gang while wearing a dark vest, top hat, and white shirt. The story of Elmer McCurdy and his traveling corpse is among the Wild West's most macabre and disturbing legends. Elmer McCurdy was a renowned bandit who was shot and killed by police officials in 1911, but his remains were not interred. It was kept by an undertaker, and before receiving a dignified burial in Oklahoma, the mummified corpse remained on display for approximately 60 years. A large-scale migration of indigenous peoples left California during the gold rush. The state quickly received significant funding for federal agricultural programs. As the number of Native Americans and Mexicans in the region decreased, Chinese immigrants began to flood the state, working as field laborers. This 1898 photograph shows 4 Chinese field workers standing for the famous picture of this historical period. In the absence of this photograph, this event would have vanished into history as, shortly after, Japanese immigrants took the place of their Chinese counterparts. An exceptional individual who rose to legendary status in the American West. We are discussing Bass Reeves, the nation's first African-American deputy marshal, serving west of the Mississippi River. Reeves was named a federal deputy marshal 1875 by Judge Isaac Parker, dubbed the hangman of the West judges. Reeves did a great job in his capacity, making over 3,000 arrests throughout his tenure. In addition, he used self-defense to slay 14 criminals. When it was feasible, Reeves liked to bring offenders alive to face the consequences of their actions. It may surprise you that this picture has no gravestones, or that it is difficult to locate Jim Young among these individuals. The town is called Tombstone. Jim Young is a guy of African-American descent, standing near the stagecoach's rear. Finding him among all the people living in Tombstone may be difficult. This 1912 picture demonstrates how the town's residents welcomed Young as one of their own. It was requested of the former slave to follow the Apache child. Despite his failure, Young settled in Tombstone. Charging Thunder was one of the Native Americans who appeared in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Does the name seem familiar to you? This Lakota chief, who was just 26 years old, joined the team. Ultimately, he wed one of the crew's American horse trainers. Romance. Ah, what a lovely item. Following the performance, Charging Thunder obtained British citizenship and began working as an elephant trainer at Manchester's Bellevue Circus. He finally became a factory worker after becoming tired of the circus and changing his identity to George Edward Williams. It's evident from this 1910 picture of a bar scene that the Wild West was indeed wild. At a saloon, bar girls and cowboys are having a great time. Everyone is dressed to the nines, the bar is completely full, and there's no shortage of drinks. The cowboys are wearing hats and bandanas, and one of them clearly seems to be clutching a weapon. The bar girls have a variety of hairdos. The next time you see a saloon scene in a cowboy film, don't be shocked if the bar becomes wild. A party of hunters and their devoted hunting dogs outside a cabin in Arizona in 1908. This bucolic setting demonstrates the companionship and spirit of adventure that hunters in the American West had as they braved the wild terrain in pursuit of food and adventure. The iconic explorer Buffalo Bill, in a picture taken in 1899, that perfectly captures his unwavering enthusiasm. Buffalo Bill was a buffalo hunter, actor, tour guide, and soldier who gained worldwide fame for his rodeo performances, which included shooting and horseback riding. He rose to prominence as one of the country's earliest superstars. He became a symbol of the bold and spectacular culture of the Wild West, a picture of a formidable gang of teenage criminals from the Wild West in 1890, known as the Rufus Gangs, made up of Native Americans and African Americans. This gang was popular for their violent robbery and abduction crimes, and they were very skilled at dodging punishment. An age of horror was put to an end when they were eventually apprehended and condemned to death after a path of dread and instability caused by their atrocities. James Miller, a criminal, in 1886. Miller was a paid assassin who could make anything from $1,500 to $2,000. He often went for his victims at night and used a black cloak to hide his identity. He is thought to have murdered around 12 individuals in shootouts. Miller murdered a U.S. Marshal, and as a result, an enraged crowd lynched him. Men at a tavern in Arizona in 1895 engaged in a gambling game. This image captures the jovial and sociable side of Wild West life, when saloons served as hubs for entertainment and companionship for men seeking solace from the trials of daily existence. The old mission church of San Miguel is a notable illustration of the Spanish colonial period in New Mexico. Around 1630, this church was founded, and the mission was little but distinctive. Are you eager to proceed and see this location? It's still possible. It is among the area's most ancient historical artifacts. It was also very important to the Pueblo Revolt. Franciscans resided in this historic cathedral for a while before Mexico's independence from Spain. It is now a popular tourist destination in Zuni Pueblo, New Mexico, drawing visitors from all over the globe. Fantastic! A picture taken in 1873 of Sheriff Bill Hickok and Gunman Bill. Hickok, who gained notoriety for his proficiency with weapons and his involvement in several violent altercations, is still remembered today. American General George Custer in an 1863 portrait. Native American tribes fought General Custer and his forces during the Civil War on the western frontier, for which he is well known. It's a common misconception that being a cowboy was as simple as riding a horse, fighting, or drinking at the bar. That's accurate in part. A group of cowboys is shown in this picture, sipping drinks and striking up a conversation with the saloon's bartender. This occurred at Old Tascosa, northern Texas, in the year 1907. Going to the bar was a way to unwind and blow off steam back then. Have a few drinks, deal cattle, and play some poker. Similar to modern-day institutions, some saloons operated around the clock, 7 days a week, and catered not just to cowboys, but also to tourists, gold diggers, soldiers, and, strangely enough, attorneys. It was the place to be. Here's the big question. Was the Old West really wild as portrayed by Hollywood and historical books? Your guesses are as good as ours. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe for more historical contents like this. See you in our next video.